Yeah, yep. Call to order. Welcome to the Laramie City Council work session for Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. And we will begin tonight's work session with a request. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, we will begin our work session considering revisions to the Storm Surface Water Utility Ordinance. And welcome, Director Webb.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Let me work with Nancy here real quick to get things going. This can work for us, right?
Yeah, that's short.
Yeah, we can just start a second.
Oh.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Mayor, Council, tonight's work session, we're going to cover pretty much items that basically what you've requested of us to research and bring back. And then we have some additional information that we're going to discuss. So one of the items we're going to talk about is the operational and capital impacts of the cap rate scenarios that we've discussed, specifically for the 100 for non-residential and the 200 for non-residential and the 30 for the residential. We've showed you those capped rates at different numbers, 300, 350, 500, and so on and so forth. And I think at our last meeting we landed, let's really focus on the 100 and 200. So that's what we're going to show you. We're going to talk about the reduced impact on government entities with the capped rates, reduced impact on affordable housing with the capped rates, some ordinance changes recommended by staff if you decide to move forward with either of those capped rates. And then Director Wade will come up and talk to you about some council discussion of ordinance changes and overview of next steps. So right off the bat, we're going to jump right in. This is your two scenarios that we've discussed. The 200 for the non-residential and the 30 for the residential. On the top line there, your total annual revenue is just over $2 million, which is you can see the next line is the annual avenue decrease from the initial program that was in place. And then the next line down is the $100 non-residential cap with the $30 residential cap. And so you can see the numbers there. The graph on the bottom shows you on the far left, that is the current program that was put in place. The blue graph there shows you the non-residential, right, where the burden is on the non-residential versus the orange, which is the residential. And then on the far right, that's your 200 and your 100. You can see at the 200 for the non-residential on the cap, it starts to kind of even out that burden on the non-residential and the residential. And then on the $100 cap, it turns it over to where more of that burden is on the residential, if you will. So for operational impacts, the operations include the maintenance, small equipment, and equipment maintenance. So small equipment would be like the crew needs a pump, right? That's a piece of small equipment. That's not a big loader or anything like that, obviously. And then the maintenance, which would include fuel and any equipment maintenance, something breaks, they got to get fixed. Annual amount dedicated to operations under the cap scenarios is $700,000. It doesn't matter which cap scenario. The maintenance program is $700 in year one. This is an increase over what the city had been providing and would fund the previously anticipated medium level of service. So from what was put in place back in last December, this does not change the maintenance side of things, right? the maintenance is really important. And so we want to maintain that level. That's the 4 additional street maintenance operators. As what I want to tell you too about those maintenance operators, in July, we hired 2 of them. The other 2 we didn't hire because the ordinance to suspend came into place. So we stopped the hiring process, but we had 2 come in. And I want to tell you about some of the work we were able to complete, even with just those 2 folks. So just in the last few months since July 1, when those folks came on board, approximately 2,000 feet of drainage ditches were cleaned and regraded in the South Laramie area. That work wouldn't have happened without those 2 people. That picture on the bottom left is a drainage channel down south next to the railroad. And that was part of the work that was done. If those channels don't get cleaned and regraded, which they hadn't been for like 15 years, they overgrow, the water backs up, and that water basically ends up sitting on the street and never moves, or moves real slow. After you do this grading, that water just flows right through those drainage ditches. We also completed the storm line cleaning in the west side, cleaned every single storm line main on the west side in Laramie. That was a 3-week process with 2 folks working. We didn't solve every problem over there. There's some problems over there that are going to take a lot of money, a lot of capital. A lot of that has to do with how flat the lines are right next to the river there. There's not a whole lot of elevation drop. But I'm happy to say the flooding was much less this summer, and my office did not receive a single call for the first time in at least 7 years in West Side. So we were happy with that. And that is a process that we intend to keep up on every spring to go out and clean those. If we can do that every year, it's a lot easier than coming back every few years when that material gets built up and packed down inside there. Another item we were able to accomplish that I thought was pretty awesome was every year when we do the pipelining, we haven't had the ability or the staff to go out and clean those lines before the lining contractor gets here. And so they do that when they get here, and we pay for that when they get here. Our crews were able to accomplish all those this year with a savings of about $50,000. With those 2 folks, approximately 24,775 feet of storm lines were cleaned since July 1. Last year, that number was less than 5,000, and the only time it happened was on a complaint basis. So just wanted to let you know how important those people are to the maintenance side of things.
I have a question from Councilor Newman.
Just have a comment because there's a rumor going around that those 2 people that we hired are just, standing around because our street sweepers are broken or whatever the rumor is. So I appreciate you bringing, like, they're actually working and they're actually helping our system out. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, Mayor. What I just read you is a lot of work that got accomplished with 2 extra bodies. Yeah. So moving on, obviously having the staff, those 4 staff members, provides for increased sweeping, inspection, and jetting of the lines. Provides for some self-performed small system upgrades. So small performed system upgrades, what are those? So those people, a small system upgrade would be like we're replacing broken inlets, right? We're repairing a small piece of a section of storm main that collapsed. We run the camera through, we got a collapse, and we can go in with that crew and we can fix that. In the past, that got logged, and that was about it. If it was really bad, we'd get a contractor to come in and do that work. But with 4 folks, we can self-perform that work. We can replace the manhole collars if they crack and break, and install or replace the backflow devices down there in the Laramie River. So those are some examples of those small system upgrades. And then the operations also funds smaller equipment purchases, like I said earlier, and then maintenance of equipment also. Just wanted to show you some quick pictures. The up top left, the white truck there, that's the vac truck or jet truck. You'll hear both terms because it does both the jets and vacs. The top right picture is a partial collapse pipe. There's some root intrusion on the left there, big root that's broken the clay pipe. Bottom left is obviously obstruction of silt and debris, and the bottom right is after it's been cleaned.
Wow.
The
Councillor O'Doherty.
Oh yeah.
Is that the pig or what? That's
Yeah.
the in the bottom right.
Yeah. Councillor Dory, through you, Mayor, I was just going to say that torpedo looking thing is the jet or the pig. Some people call it the pig. And when that thing's turned on, there's water that comes out in all different directions and it turns and it's super high pressure and it knocks all that debris down and flushes it out of those lines. So you can see the difference there. That's a 16-inch line. So on the left-hand side, you can see there's only about 8 inches of capacity there. And those pictures inside the pipe those are with the new camera truck. And it actually, the video on it's amazing. They can go in and we actually have a video of the broken pipe there where it comes up next to it and does the full 360 around the pipe. So you can see the entire pipe and what it looks like in there. But this is also that pipe collapse is a good example of that. And something we could perform in-house, right? We could go in and dig that up, cut that section out, replace that pipe, and then probably come back the next year with our pipelining and line that whole section. So on the capital side of things, with the cap rates,
Sorry.
Yes.
Mayor, Councillor Bowling has his hand raised.
Okay, I can't see him from here. Thank you for letting me know. Councillor Bowling, you have a question or a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a quick curiosity question, Director Webb. Thank you. In the previous slide, what causes something like the broken pipe in that upper right-hand picture?
Yeah, Mayor, through you, that's roots right there, and probably 90% of the time it's root intrusion. But that's a large root that's busted through. I think on the next, if I go back a slide, that slide in the middle, it's kind of hard to see, or that picture in the middle is kind of hard to see. That's roots being pulled out of a storm pipe. Smaller roots, but that one there on the top right is a really big root that's busted the clay pipe.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mayor. So on the capital side of things, with the capped rates, we're looking at one additional staff member. The original program had 2, but if we're cutting back over $1 million of capital, we don't need to. So we would, on a capped rate scenario, we would go down to 1 additional staff member in engineering. And then the capital plan, you see there the reduction there. Basically, with the $200 cap, the capital investment is reduced by 35% or $21 million over 10 years. And then not reduced by 21 million, but it is 21 million over 10 years. Sorry. And then at 100, it's reduced by 43% and gives us about $16 million in capital over 10 years. And then it requires us to reprioritize capital projects through future budget processes. If there's cap rates, we've got to redo the entire capital budget anyway, so we would just do that with the normal budget process. Large projects would be dependent on grants or SPT. Small neighborhood projects would still be addressed. So if you look at the pictures there on the left, that is a detention pond outlet structure at Nighthawk. We would consider a smaller project, but does good work, right? It holds back, detains the water, and then actually releases it at a small rate, so that it doesn't overwhelm the system downstream. And then a larger project would be an example on the right there, which is the Turner Track detention pond across from the high school that was built a few years back. The top right picture was one of the box culverts being installed out on Wyoming Avenue. Again, another large project, multi-million-dollar project that was completed last year. The capital fund would also take care of large equipment replacements, the vac trucks, the camera trucks, street sweeper. Those prior to the surface water fund, those were coming out of the general fund, obviously. The street sweepers are both due for replacement in the next 2 years. And so without this fund, those funds would be coming from the general fund and competing with other pieces of equipment in the general fund. And then, of course, the capital program would continue our pipelining, which was previously funded from the general fund. Pipelining is an awesome project. I don't know if anybody's seen them. The crew's in town now doing the pipelining. This might be a good opportunity to just let you know, too, at the end of the month, 1st of December, they're going to be on 30th, near 30th and Grand. There's not going to be a full closure, but there will be some lane shifts and some traffic issues up there. They'll just be in there for a few days, but wanted to let you know that.
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, Director. And just to make sure I am clear here, the street sweepers would not be able to be included if we were to go to the $100 or $200 cap. That would still come from the general fund, or it could be.
And Mayor, through you, know, this is with the cap.
We could still.
We would still be purchasing those large equipments with the caps. From the capital side, I think we'd consider those capital.
Perfect. Thank you. I wasn't sure I had heard you right, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. So this is what we would be doing, right? This is what we would be doing. So this is the reduced impact on government entities with a cap. So if you start on the top line there, Albany County, at the current rate, this is what they pay per month, $4,660 approximately. With a $100 cap, they would pay $435. With a $200 cap, they'd pay $645. The state and YDOT, who's here tonight, and you've heard from before, the current rate for all those properties, approximately $6,720 at the current rate, $450 with the $100 cap, and $785 with the $200 cap. The reduced impact on affordable housing. WSP put this slide for us together. I'm going to kind of drop down to the middle, just below the middle there. Affordable housing summary, number of parcels, it says 81. Keep in mind that's the number of parcels, not the number of units. Those parcels have lots of units on them. Sunny Meadows, 2 parcels, over 200 units. Okay, so where we're talking about these number of parcels, the top part is where we get into the units, assuming that parcel owner is going to take that fee and equally distribute it to every unit. At the current rate, the median is $6.05. With a $100 cap, it's $2.15 per unit. At the $200 cap, it's $4.30 per unit. Any questions on that? Because Aaron's here. Okay, so I wanted to talk real quick about if we move forward with capture. We got a hand.
City Clerk, do you have a?
We have a hand from Councilor Freed.
Oh, Councilor Freed's here. Yes, Councilor Freed, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Hope you all can hear me well. Yeah, Director Webb, really appreciate the presentation going through these slides. And could you just describe again the slide you were just on about those parcels and what that means and why that number is increasing?
Mayor, through you on the affordable housing. So on that slide, it shows number of parcels at 81, right? And is what I was saying was that's the number of parcels because we're billing by parcel. But on each parcel, there's numerous units, if you will, or dwellings, right? And so the example I used with Sunny Meadows is 2 parcels, but has over 200 units. And so that takes us back up to the top one where we have it actually broken out by unit if that parcel owner was to distribute that fee equally across each unit.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Did that answer your question, Counselor Freed? Good.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, so this slide is some staff recommendations. If we move forward with a cap rate, there's going to have to be some ordinance changes, obviously. And so these are some staff recommendations that we would recommend. The first one is changes to the condominium billing process. A lot of those condominiums, if you look at them on the parcel map, which is what the ordinance says we bill off of, their developer's name is on those. We found out when we sent the bills out to those developers, they don't own those anymore. They have since sold that property off. The county keeps records of that through deeds. And so we would need some flexibility in the ordinance, and we would write something in there for recommendation for you in the ordinance on how we would bill that. I don't know exactly what that wording would look like, but if we come back, I wanted you to be aware of it. The other thing we had talked about prior was caps by billing unit. So the way the system's set up, the way all of our information is set up is through that billing unit. So we wouldn't, if you decided you wanted a $200 cap, it would actually be 240 because we would do 120 billing units, right? And then for the $100 cap, it'd be 120 because we'd be billing 60 billing units. And then the 18 billing units for the $30.06 for the residential stuff. And then the last item, as we've talked before, the credit program removal. Cap rates equals no credit program. We've got to, if we're capping rates and we're lowering that capital project revenue by over $1 million, we've got to be able to sustain the revenue for future project planning. We can't take that down over $1 million and then throw credits on top of it. And we just can't plan that way for a 10-year capital plan to figure out what that revenue is going to be. And I think the next slide I'm going to throw over to Director Wynn.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I feel like we're joining together to kind of get some direction this evening on a really important discussion for our community. And so what we've been doing as staff members is not only, of course, trying to provide you with the information that you're asking for with the assistance of our consultants, but also listening to what you're saying as we're going through these work sessions, and also listening to what members of the public are saying. And we feel like tonight what we've tried to do is really wrap up the pieces of information that you've asked for to help you make a good decision here. And so what we did as a team is say, you know, how could we really help the council aggregate some of the decisions that might be before them so that they can have a meaningful conversation this evening. And that really is what this slide is about. And so what we've done is we have presented for you in a table format the various options that have been most commonly discussed. Those options, as we have heard them, have been a cap of around $200, a $230 scenario, $100.30 scenario, and then an option to repeal. It does not, by having this table in front of you to guide your discussion this evening, does not by any means, of course, that you're limited to these options. But because these are the options we have most frequently heard you talk about, we thought it might be helpful for you to have them on the screen as you have some great discussion this evening. We also thought it might be handy for you to have a reference on the material that we covered this evening, because my goodness, you just heard it. And so just to summarize what Director Webb so eloquently put for you, both capped options at either the 230 or the 130 level have around $700,000 in operating costs. Like Director Webb said, there's some staffing in there, and then there's the maintenance work that goes along with that. There's the revenue options under either of those, the revenue generated by either of those rate options, and the approximate annual available for capital investment, as well as the available amount over a 10-year period. The reason I wanted to display these totals separately is that what you're going to see is that if you do some simple math and you just times the average annual available for capital investment by 10 years, you don't really come up with the number below. And that's because when we're looking at a 10-year plan, we're assuming some inflationary things happen in the future. That maybe we like what we're seeing with this program, maybe future councils decide that they want to adopt some modest rate increases, and those assumptions are part of any 10-year plan, but that is not what is being adopted. And so when we talk about, the reason I wanted to talk about this evening is we're saying approximate amount available with reasonable assumptions for things like inflation, and this is where we end up. But these numbers are very much contingent on the actions of future councils, not just this council. And so I thought it was really important to show you that annual amount in current dollars so that you know what that is, as well as with some reasonable assumptions for inflation, if you're happy with the program, what you might be able to achieve. And when I say reasonable, I'm talking like 3%, 4% range. I'm not talking about 10%. So I want to be really clear there. I also want to be clear that both options A and B, both of these capped options, have the original $5 million investment from the general fund. And so we're not clawing that back in any way, even though the revenue might be reduced. We think it's important to leave that $5 million investment there. Although we'd like to say that that contribution might be allocated over multiple fiscal years because it's a different type of capital plan. And we may need to look at that in relationship to things like SPT match. So you'll remember that some of those assumptions in the original rate, it was the $5 million from the general fund, and that was pretty much it. And so we're going to look at that financial condition after we receive direction from the council. And what we would do is we would bring back to you, basically saying, okay, if we're going to take this $5 million, how do we put this to best use based on the program decisions that you're really trying to achieve? And finally, if the council decides this evening that the best option would be to repeal, then what we would say is none of these things are going to matter, because at this point, you would need to be talking about a different revenue source for any level of service that you would want for this thing. And it doesn't mean we can't continue to still talk about it, but we wouldn't be talking about things like operating costs and capital investment, because it would be an entirely new plan. And so that's why I thought it most appropriate to include just not applicable here, because we would be having a new set of conversations.
Councilor Lockhart, is that a question?
It is.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Wade. Can you bring us back up to speed on how much money we've been using from the general fund already? Not the $5 million, but just in the you say low-level service. Yes. How much we've been doing on average the last 5 years?
Yeah. So I'm going to ask Director Webb to correct me if I speak wrong in any way, but we consistently fund about $150,000 a year for the pipelining program from the general fund. There's also a pipelining program in wastewater, but the purpose of that is different. So $150,000. And then we do intermittently purchase things like street sweepers. That's fairly intermittent. And so you might say, well, that's another on average $150,000 a year. And I think that would be a fair number. What do you think? In terms of capital, in my opinion, there has been no consistent investment from the general fund. And so those numbers you saw earlier, they had several studies, and most of the work we funded out of the general fund, Councilmember Lockhart, has really, it's been more studies, and some of those can be costly. And the number you all saw before, it wasn't just a single study, there were also some reappropriated amounts. And so you might also add to that maybe another $150,000 to $200,000 a year, assuming that resources were available, that would total the existing general fund contribution. And so what are we up to? Maybe $500,000 or $600,000 a year? Director Webb, do you think that's close? Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Director. I see no further.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. And so that's all the introduction I feel is necessary for this slide. Happy to answer any more questions you may have, but at this point, I think just turning it over to you all. I'll take a seat. You all have the conversations that you need to have as staff members. We're going to listen. We are absolutely here to answer any questions you may have and to support you in any way with the decision that, or maybe the direction that you're going to provide to us this evening.
Thank you. And Assistant City Manager Fieser, were you going to present any information or? Anything?
Mayor, through
Yes, sir.
council. I'm actually the closer after you get done with your discussions, so I'll be coming in.
Okay.
Closing this up. I do want to, before I do turn it over to you, I think it's just been a pleasure to work with Jen and Brooks over the past couple of weeks on this and kind of devising a way to get it digestible for yourself and for the public. And I also want to extend the great thanks to Janine Jordan for the years of work on this effort. It's a difficult time that we're in, and we're trying to really make good decisions for our future. I will tell you one thing is if council can take anything out of this is a dedicated funding source and a charge towards surface water drainage utility is where we need to go. We have to find a way, and we are seeing a constriction of revenues at this point that are not going to allow us to continue to do this. And so it's really important that we find a revenue source to put in and have a charge. Like you see some impact. I was actually out and had lunch with the guys, and they were showing me the videos of the impacted storm sewer on Harney. And it was about 600 feet at 40% impacted that they cleaned out. It took them a whole week. I could only imagine what that means for us in surface water drainage flow and protection to our community that we were unable to do due to lack of funding or lack of dedicated funding and charge towards this service. So as you discuss that, think about that really once we get dedicated, and as Director Webb indicated tonight, is that, you see these improvements that lead to better improvements and more security for our public and safety of their well-being and their property.
Thank you. Councilors, Councilor O'Doherty.
I have a question that may be for Director Webb or one of the other engineering types. So it's my assumption, just what seems like common sense to me, but often that's not right. But if we didn't have storm drains full of sediment, would we have less root intrusion? Does that sediment sitting there and then a pool of water sitting behind it, does that increase the root intrusion so that by cleaning the pipes, does it help in the long term maintain so that our systems doesn't break down as fast? Thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I can take a shot at that one. Roots, they know how to find water. That's kind of what they're evolved to do. And it's hard to say specifically in any case, but I would tend to agree that if there's a constant pool of water and there's even the smallest seepage through a pipe, the roots are going to find that and find the best way into that. And pipes that are cleaned, one, it may prevent those roots from finding that, but it also will allow you to see where you do have a gap in a joint or you have a crack, and you'll be able to identify that and say, well, we need to line that or we need to replace that section.
Thank you. We're taking questions and comments. So, Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, everyone, for your discussion and a lot of work that does not escape us. That's a lot of work that you guys have been putting forth, not just the last 6 months, but many, many years. My thoughts on the whole thing, if we go with, option A or option B, and my thoughts are, if the proof's in the pudding, if we choose one of these and we go to work and start getting some funds from grants and SPTs, and we start doing a lot of these projects along with what we have, people may come to light and go, you know what, we need more. And then 4 or 5 years down the road, maybe we can get some more buy-in if we increase it to do more. But I think the proof's in the pudding. If we can get it started, it's kind of like retail. You start out low, you've got your impulse aisle, they believe in a product, all of a sudden they're like, you know what, I want more of this, and then they increase the price, but they're getting more but they're getting more bang for their buck. So just wanted to throw that out there, because I think we got a lot of work to show the community that the money is really being used. And then once they see the results of it, I think there would be more buy-in on a community-wide basis. Thank you.
Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully we're not using clay pipes anymore for the installation, but I want to know if we are lining old clay pipes with in situ, or if we are just continuing to repair the clay pipes until they need to be replaced.
Director Webb?
Mayor, we're lining clay and concrete pipes depending on how bad the pipes are, the condition of the pipe.
Thank you. Follow up?
Just the second part of that question. I know you said we have concrete and clay. Are we continuing to have these lines made out of clay, or are we sticking with the poly pipes or the concrete, or what are we doing right now as far as putting these pipes in?
Yeah, Mayor, the clay pipe is no longer being used.
Thank you. Councillor Newman.
So the credit program removal, I want to make sure that there's still an avenue for like low income and like, you know, I want to make sure that's not part of that program, and there's still an avenue for like, you know, people who really actually need it, who are living off of like our nonprofits and stuff at the moment.
Honorable Mayor and Council, through you to Councilor Newman, this does not impact the low-income program that was put forward, and I'm going to look to Brooks and Jen to make sure that that's correct. Yeah, when we talk about the credits, it's about the if you have a detention pond or something on your lot. It's not about the low-income house or the low-income assistance program that we had developed.
Thank you. Further questions and/or comments? Yes.
Mayor, Councillor Bowling has his hand raised.
All right. Councillor Bowling, you have a question or a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. A question, and this might be for Director Webb. I'm just going back a few slides to the recommended ordinance changes from staff and thinking about changes to the condominium billing process. I'm just curious, like what it seems like there's a good deal of like work research required in trying to figure out where those deeds are, how we bill by something other than that parcel database. And I'm just wondering if staff can reflect a little bit upon like what that additional workload is, considering, you know, what we've found out since those bills have gone out.
Yeah, Mayor, through you, we have access to all those deeds. I don't know that it's a heavy lift. There's going to be some work there, but really is what I was trying to let you know here is that if we come back with some ordinance changes, you're going to see that in there. I didn't want you to be surprised, right? And again, I don't know exactly what that wording will look like in there, but we're going to need some flexibility on those condominiums so that we can bill appropriately, and bill the actual owner of the dwelling and the property there. So is that fair, Mark? Mark's the one that's really been working through that stuff, but I don't think it's a huge lift at this point. We have access to that information.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor O'Doherty.
If we assume, like I thought it was a very telling graph showing who is paying for most of this, if you put the different caps. And so at that between 100 and a $200 cap, it shifts from commercial being higher to residential being higher. So is it safe to assume that if we chose some midpoint, that it would be something, all of the values you've given us for total annual revenue, things like that, it's probably a midpoint? Is that safe, except for like what we're saying is the basic charge, that's going to be this, the 700,000 a year, that's going to be the same no matter what. But as far as revenue, would that, yeah, midpoint be up roughly a midpoint?
Yeah, Mayor, through you, I don't know exactly where that break point is, but what you're saying makes total sense, right? That somewhere in the middle would even that out.
Can I follow up?
Yes, follow up.
So that might put us at 100 billing units, which is a nice round number, 90 billing units to 100 billing units. So I wonder about having a cap at 100 billing units. So that's what I might propose. Thanks.
Director Wade.
Honorable Mayor, through you, just also in response to Councilmember O'Doherty's question, it's one of the reasons we chose to provide you the $100 and the $200 scenario, because it clearly shows you the in-between spaces. And like I said earlier, we know that you may choose to land in some of those in-between spaces, and we think that's pretty easy to assess. I'm just using some fairly simple math on the fly.
Thank you. Councilors, further questions or comments? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for all the work that has gone into this. But as Councilor Lockhart has said over not just this last little bit of time, but all the years that everyone has put effort into this. You know, I'm not totally sure where I sit and land on this just yet, but I mean, I think I could either the 100 or the 200. However, I feel like in looking at this, I think about some of our real big businesses and that they will be paying $200 when some of our smaller businesses are also paying $200 just kind of pains me a little bit. But I also recognize we can't make this fair because as we've talked about along the way, then we have some businesses who have a ton of space, but are like a pretty small mom and pop sort of business. And then they're getting hit really hard, which I think we've all talked about. When I look at that graph specifically, having it more even between business and residents feels better to me. I have a hard time with residents paying more than businesses do when we know that we have some real big businesses who can certainly probably afford to do. I mean, I feel like probably Walmart is okay paying more than $200 a month. And so I guess all that to say, I think it's a little bit of a tricky. It's not as easy as we all would like it to be because you're never quite landing in a perfect spot. But I do think if we can find a spot that we're all comfortable with to move forward, that feels reasonable, again, to Councilor Vihill's comment, I think this solution that you all have presented is a great one. And it's a spot where we can start. And to Councilor Lockhart's proof is in the pudding. I think you're exactly right. I think we can do something smaller at this level, show what it can do, reevaluate, you know, in future councils and see where to go. But it's nice to have something that's a little bit tangible. We can do some smaller projects and then think about how do we do those bigger projects along the way. So just throwing all my stream of consciousness thoughts out there for all of you and just thank you for it.
City Clerk. Somewhere,
Mayor, we have both counselors online with hands.
Okay, let's bring in Councilor Bowling and then Councilor Freed. Oops, before we do that, Councilor Newman was in line. And so Councilor Newman, if you'll go next, please.
Oh, now or next?
Now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. This is a lot, and it's not an easy conversation because we've been having it for so long, right? And I've talked against this since the beginning, and I kind of, you know, I'm glad that staff brought the $100 because that's kind of what we heard the most during this whole thing, and then the 200. I kind of like the $100 billing or the 100 billing units as well. I have a comment, and the comment is, and it's on the next slide, but I wanted to make sure the public understood why we're having this talk now. We know there's a lawsuit. We know that senators over the hill are working on some things too. But we can't just let this go incomplete, right? Just in case. And so with that being said, I think whatever council decides, and it kind of goes along with what Councilor Lockhart was saying, maybe we put, for an instance, we choose option B and we have a 2-year review built into that already. So we automatically know, so option B there, we automatically know that like, hey, if this is working and people are happy and they're okay with it, like the future councils will know like, hey, like look at this again kind of stuff. So that was kind of my comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my colleagues have sort of covered really what I was going to say, sort of just to reiterate some of the things that Councilor Newman just said in terms of like, it's very important that we continue this research and this planning and this conversation, even in light of circumstances beyond our control. And then also to reiterate, the Vice Mayor, I'm very much in agreement, and perhaps personally just frustrated or disillusioned by the idea that there doesn't seem to be a path towards equity in the way that I think about equity, in terms of like the size of an organization or a business or et cetera. I personally don't feel comfortable with any scenario in which residential community members shoulder a larger burden than commercial. So I think Councillor Doherty's suggestion is a well-founded one. I also don't see a massive difference between the option A and option B in terms of just, I mean, they're still pretty close to the line. And then again, to reiterate the comments from Councillor Lockhart to say that absolutely, this is a place to start. And when we see results, as I think Director Webb so eloquently showed us even already since July today, like the impacts that when there is investment, we can have pretty quickly. That is going to continue to help us and then also future councils figure out what adjustments need to be made, improvements on this. But we're really in a position where we have to do something and we have to move forward because there's no other way to pay for this. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Freed is next, and then Lockhart, and then Shumway. Councillor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I really appreciate the comments from my fellow council members and the city staff. And to take us back a few months, I mean, we really heard members of the public that were frustrated maybe by the lack of transparency and not quite understanding what a utility bill for surface water fee was, and how we got to those numbers, and kind of the intention behind it. And I'm grateful for this pause because it's allowed us to do a lot of work. We still have another couple weeks or so before this pause ends on December 3rd, but I really feel that the city staff has come back with some really good ideas, and I really like option A and B as some potential solutions to this because, we know we need to work on this infrastructure. I think a lot of members of the community would agree, and this feels like a way that we can keep the funding that's coming in relatively equal and equitable. And so, I'm just really grateful to all the work that folks have put in and the time that the public has spent coming and giving opinions and comments and thoughts and strategies. And I really like option A and B. Thanks.
Could you repeat that last statement?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Sorry. I really like option A and option B as potentials for this surface water fee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. I disagree with Councillor Richardson and Councillor Bowling on the commercial not shouldering more than the residents. Reason being, we have a lot more residents out there than we have businesses. There's a lot more billing going out to them. So I disagree with that. I just want to share that. And we all know how to make this fair. Repeal it and put it on the ballot. Then everybody pays a tax. I was at the meeting 2 days ago. I we're so busy. I don't understand. I don't remember everything. But sales tax just in tourism in 2024 from tourism from out of state people, we did $5.2 million in sales tax. Okay, so 5.2 million. So just consider if we're getting their money plus our own, and we're choosing to spend money versus having it being forced to pay a bill. That's your money you're choosing to spend. Okay, so if I choose to go spend money on a car or a TV or groceries or whatever it is, and I get taxed on it, that's my choice. I'm not being forced to pay. So there's a solution to make it fair to everybody. We didn't get that buy-in for that, so we're looking at option A and option B. I just wanted to give you my feedback on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Shumway, I need to start writing this down now.
Thank you, Mayor. As I look at the proposal, I think that the residents are going to get hit twice, and let me tell you why. First of all, families should make a budget. So every month they say, oh, now I need to pay I need to change my budget to where there's $30 a month more on the budget. And that's fine. They keep track of it and they pay it, and away they go. Now, most commercial have the option of either taking the hit themselves and paying it all or pass through, which means they look at it and they say, they also do an analysis of income and what they have, and they say now our prices have increased, let's say $1,000 more a year. We can either take that off our bottom line, or we can do a pass through where it goes higher prices, because everyone in Laramie is going to be paying a commercial, all the commercials are going to be paying these fees. And as they get that, then they say either we'll pass it through and the residents will pay for it again, and we don't have to take that $1,000 hit, or we can just pay it and say, we do that because we love Laramie and we don't want to, we want to take that out of our pocket instead of out of theirs. But in my mind, if I had a business, I'd pass it through. And I think that, when we say, the residents pay one portion of it and commercial pay the rest, not necessarily.
Councillor Newman, before I go to you, if I can just clarify one thing, the 130 or the 230 are caps, and the average residential is 10, and smaller residential is running about 6 to 8. And so all residential would not be 30. It would be the cap for the larger ones that previously were coming in at hundreds of dollars. Councillor Newman?
This is also mentioned on the next slide, but we also need to extend the pause. I think for like 6 months, I think would be a good start. Maybe we don't know about the lawsuit. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to play one. I've watched many court cases over the hill, and I'm like, the Supreme Court's going to rule this way, and they rule a whole different way. Whichever option we pick, I think there also needs to be something brought forward that we extend the pause for about 6 months to kind of see what the lawsuit happens and all that other stuff.
Yes. And tonight's discussion, though, is focused on the work and revisions that we wish to make to the plan so that we can complete our work.
It's just a next bullet point on this one.
And put this to rest until the other matters are settled. So our goal here is to come to consensus tonight so that we can bring something forward and have a final product. And then the other matters of legalities and whether it's legal or not legal, which is a matter of diverse legal opinion at this point, is kind of separate from what we're doing tonight. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm also kind of thinking about what was shared on how much we're spending right now per year, which is not even close to fixing the problem, right? Every year it gets worse and worse and worse because we're not getting close to what we need. And so I'm also looking at this chart and thinking about, when I look at year to year, it doesn't seem like that much difference, right? Whether we go with 200 or 100, it doesn't seem very small. But when you look at that 10-year number, it starts to add up. And that's where I'm struggling, because I think I just have concerns that if we go too low, we're just going to continue to kind of widen that gap. And will we be, and I get it and completely agree with Councilor Lockhart, like start, and if it works, then kind of inch your way up. But I also, will it be a whole nother discussion with a whole nother council about, going through this process again? Or can we at least take a bite out of the apple now to get us moving in the right direction, by going just a little bit higher? And maybe it's not, maybe it's even falling in between, and maybe it's going 150 if that's where we need to start. But just to make that gap, that 21 million to 16 million that's a chunk. That's probably one fairly good sized project.
Did you wish to address something related to that?
I have a comment that could be helpful, if that would be appropriate.
Please.
I just want to make sure that I point out, like I did before, just because I think it may help clarify some things, that like that number at the bottom is assuming future council decisions, and inflation, it does add up and it does work differently on different numbers. And the larger the number, the more you see that. And so I would encourage you, for a point of comparison, maybe to look at that approximate annual available for capital investment, because I think that may make some of these conversations a little easier.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. I think maybe kind of two thoughts here. So one, I really struggle, and I know the intention is well, but I struggle in talking about future councils, because I think that's what past councils have said about us and what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of struggle with that. I think that right now we've been elected to make some decisions and to figure some things out, and hopefully future councils will like that, or maybe they won't. We don't know. So I don't want to, opine too much about what future councils may or may not do. The second thing that I would say is that, if we go too low on this, my fear is that the public, will see, well, I'm getting charged for this, but nothing is happening. The streets are still flooding, right? Because we can't do some of those larger projects. And not everyone pays attention to city council meetings all the time. Not everyone knows what we're doing all of the time. And so if folks are seeing that they're getting charged on their bill, but we can only do like smaller neighborhood projects, then they're going to be like, well, what am I paying into if like the larger problem isn't being addressed? And so I think in a lot of ways I lean towards option A, knowing that it's still not enough. I think I'm fine with either one, but that's kind of where I lean. And so, yeah, just some thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor O'Doherty?
Councilor Lockhart said, if we just put it on the ballot, but we got to remember that the operating cost, we can't put that on the ballot. That's day-to-day operations. So to me, that's the most important thing and I think people will see the results. And I think we need more videos out there to show these things, because we're aware of, pictures. I mean, I love these pictures, but, we need to get them out to the public so they can see that we did, 2,000 feet of drainage ditches in South Laramie this summer. Like, let's really let people know about the work that's being done. But we have to have that. We have to have the operating costs. We have to be able to have some staff that are dedicated to this and have some predictability. So anyway, I understand this starting low and then perhaps going up in a few years, reevaluating. I think I'm fine with that because it isn't really that big a difference between B and A for the annual. So if that makes people more comfortable. Also, I want to point out that graph showing commercial versus residential. Yeah, there's more residential partials, but the commercial area is a lot bigger. We know that there's one entity that has 31% of the area, and we know that has a lot of drainage. So the area, that's why we were going with impervious surface. Anyway, thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you to the staff for your careful listening to council, for your taking our comments and our stream of consciousness and putting it, I'm teasing you, putting it into a plan that we can look at and try to make decisions on. And I appreciate the work that has gone into this. And I think I'm struck, Councillor Vigil, by your remarks about the need. First of all, we do have a fiduciary duty to our community. Water can cause tremendous damage, and sometimes that damage is not a big flood coming into your basement and that's super obvious, but it's the damage of water sitting on a street, what it does to the street, what it does to the sidewalk. It causes this insidious damage. And I think there's a question of balance and a threshold where if we do not fund to the proper amount and we're still getting that insidious water damage, all of the investments that we're putting into infrastructure and into streets and into sidewalks, all of that has the potential for damage, that we're not protecting the integrity of the investment we're making in infrastructure and have been making actively for a decade now. And the improvements that have been made are significant. And I think we've seen that these improvements take a lot of time, such as 3rd Street, years to get done. And now that we have some of this investment, I think we need to protect it. So I don't think we want to underservice our infrastructure. And I'm more inclined toward an option A, where we have some money available for some of the capital projects that are necessary and are going to be necessary to protect our investment that we've made in infrastructure and that we're about to make. And so I think that's just my concern. And Councillor Lockhart, I understand when you talk about start low, let everybody get used to it, and then we'll go up. But if we start below the threshold for maintenance and damage is occurring while we wait for everybody to get used to it, then we're undoing ourselves. And so that's that would be my rationale for going with option A. And I think it's fair. And I think there are things that we can work out. Further comments or questions before we go to the public? Huh?
You still have more slides?
Do you have further after this before we go to public?
No,
or?
Honorable Mayor, after you go to the public, we'd just like to close.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Thank you for your input, Mr. Newman. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium. Good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. I'm listening to discussion, fascinated by what people are considering here. And I agree with Councilor Richardson that it is very, very hard, maybe impossible to make things completely fair. One thing I'm concerned, one thing I'm concerned about is that caps, which is the only option which staff has presented to you tonight, can sometimes be fair, but more often than not, they're very unfair because you have this curve which just suddenly cuts off no matter how, what the cost is, due to a particular property. There's no proposal in the presentation about something graduated rather than, something a little less linear than the straight cost per billing unit. There's also in the presentation you've seen tonight, no consideration of lowering the cost per billing unit. And the effect of that is that when you have a cap at the high end and you don't lower the cost at the low end, you're shifting the burden from those who are more likely to be able to pay to those who are likely to be less likely to pay. The people who are not as well off. Someone who's, for example, on a fixed income and just barely hanging on to their property and really does have a cash crunch. So I would consider you to think, I would urge you to think outside the box and consider options than just the two cap options that you saw tonight. I'd also urge you to consider keeping the credits because if you don't have the credits for things like detention ponds, developers are going to skimp on them in the long run. This could cost us more. So it's not necessarily a good idea to do that. As for housing affordability, again, another reason to look at to lower the cost per billing unit, which wasn't discussed, because to make things affordable, you need to look at people at the low end. And the other advantage of doing that, by the way, lowering the cost per billing unit, is that everybody benefits a little. And therefore, when this goes to the voters, and I know there's controversy over whether this goes to the voters, but my reading of the state law is that we have to have an election. You can say, okay, we've reduced the fee. That's appealing to voters. It's more likely that they'll say yes to something like that. As for Councilor Newman's proposal to delay this for another 6 months, I think it's a great idea because it will do one thing that will really help us out. It will let Cheyenne, which is going to impose this as of January 1st, be the test case. We won't have the burden and the worries and the headaches and the upheavals of having to go through the lawsuit or having to impose something and then repeal it again. So I would say that we should talk about all these things, but we should delay doing anything until we see what happens in Cheyenne. And that's what I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glass. Further public comment on this agenda item? Yes. And if you can state your name for the record, please.
Jeremy Chatfield, I'm with YDOT. I'm just kind of curious. We're talking $200 caps, $100 caps. Is that, I realize this isn't question and answer, but for YDOT, a $200 cap means we're still paying $800 a month. I don't understand that. Can we go back to the slides?
Yeah, it would be, that would be total for all the parcels.
Mayor, would you like me to pull up the slide?
Please. So it's at the current rate, YDOT per month would be $600 6,720
No.
at the $100 cap.
That's state entities with YDOT. YDOT pays $4,800 at the current rate.
Okay.
So there's really not for us anyway, the $200 or $100 cap is not. I mean, we're still going to wind up paying $800. So
6,720 is monthly.
Is monthly, yes. Right now we pay.
Then you'd be $785 monthly.
Yeah, we paid 4,800 of that 6,720. There's other state entities wrapped up in that.
So number. Then you'd pay less than $785.
We would pay somewhat less, but it's not a $100, $200 cap for agencies like us. Just I just wanted to point that out so that everybody is on the same page.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Henderson, I think you were next. And if you can state your name for the record.
My name is Eric Henderson. I reside in the west side of Laramie, and on day 99, I'm less clear about what direction y'all are going to go than ever before, so I completely support either a repeal entirely or a pause continued. That up front. Regarding some of the conversation, I'm encouraged by Director Webb indicating that the increase of 2 staff has made substantial efforts possible. I'm not a proponent of increasing staff size. We've increased staff size substantially in 4 years alone, let alone over time without much change in population for our city. Yet, I love that news. I love that report. And I like the specificity that Director Webb gave as to what exactly was done. I think that if we were looking at specific rank order projects that are required in a specific excise tax proposal, the city staff have put together a tremendous plan to go to a city vote on a 7th penny. That's the only thing that precludes us not paying 4 and 5 and 6 times as a community. Support the concern by one counselor with your general fund. Not one of 9 of you have proposed since December 4th, 2024, an expansion of staffing, which has been monumentally valuable to the department. Not one proposal has come. In fact, many proposals are authored by city staff, not y'all. And y'all select which ones you're going to propose and sponsor and second and so forth. But to the point of paying multiple times, I don't really care as a citizen to have a $4 million specific excise tax integrated into being voted on in one case. Then you're coming back to hit me as my residence or my business. That's 3 times just in going forward in the next year that we can look forward to getting hit. The pass-throughs, that's not making affordability anymore. To go at a $10 per residence fee, many retirees don't have that luxury. They haven't seen a cost of living increase in more than 5 years. That's very impactful to me that my neighbors are going to lose their homes potentially because the cost of living in Laramie just continues to raise and raise and raise. We go forward with planning recommendations for zoning change in Snowy Range, Garfield, and Cedar Street. Cedar Street's a high impact flood area. The water tables continue to rise and fall with the flow of the river alone already. So you impact with more watershed in a big zone like this that goes from being undeveloped in that industrial 2 zoning section. And this council doesn't seem interested in exploring, nor did the Planning Commission, a A land swap trade as proposed by Wendy Chapman. Not one discussion from 3 ward representatives on
Point of
that.
order.
We're completely off topic at this point in time, and you are over.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any further public comment? Okay. And back to, we're going to do just Councilor Newman.
I asked the question specifically for the low income because the people who haven't got a cost of living raise are the ones that I was worried about. So that question was answered. This work session was brought by us. Like, these were our numbers. I didn't support these numbers, but the majority of us did. So staff, you guys didn't bring this to us. You did what we asked you to do, which happens at almost every work session that we have. So, I mean, I've seen on Facebook, I see it here, it's getting pretty bad that us 9 are getting targeted when we are the ones directing our staff, and then our staff gets directed because we're the ones that directed it. So I wanted to put it out there, like, we are the ones that directed this. Staff did what we asked them to do. The low income stuff was answered, right? So, like, I'm getting frustrated with, and I appreciate the public input, but please be like respectful and tell the truth when you get up here.
Thank you. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to address the concern that some on the council have of infrastructure being ruined by stormwater runoff. First of all, I think all of us are familiar with Laramie. Snow starts sometime soon. It'll go until June. We're going to have snow on the ground, and the most of the damage to infrastructure is from freeze thaw. And also a lot of damage happens from flooding. The places where we have stormwater drainage, I think it is very adequate for carrying away rain and melting snow. I don't think the damage comes from rain and melting snow. It comes two main causes: freeze thaw and flooding.
And I am seeing flooding after a 15-minute storm in certain areas. And it takes an hour to 2 hours to drain. Now that we are able to do some adequate maintenance, I think that is going to shift that. But that's going to require continued funding to do that. But I see that throughout the summer, we were having consistent flooding in certain areas, and we know where those areas are. And sometimes, to me, it's surprising that it occurs there. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to just acknowledge Mr. Glass's comments. I totally agree that having something that is, each of us pay the same credits and it's based on your, scalable, that is actually the most equitable. However, that is not what the public wanted. And I think you and I maybe are in the minority on that one. The public said, we don't want to pay more than X amount. And so I think we tried to respect that, and also acknowledging those, those folks who were out there that, yes, in theory, it made sense and it was equitable. But when we thought about the type of business they were, it was like, oh, holy smokes, ouch, sorry, small business. And I love the idea of the credits. I would love to be able to give people credits back and award them for the work they have done to help with the storm drainage, but it just doesn't work with this model. And I'm just going to go back to, we've got to start somewhere. And if it is something smaller like this, that we can do some real tangible projects, I can get behind it. But I appreciate your comments because I feel very similarly. And even if we had scaled those amounts down, those, as Mayor Cumbia said, those outliers were still going to be real outliers. And so I appreciate, and to Councilor Newman, we did ask for this. We said we want to look at caps. And so thank you, staff, for bringing those here. And I think we do have a space. I do feel like we are in a spot where we can make a decision next meeting when we have a voting meeting.
Councilor Newman.
It seems like I've been speaking like for this. I still wish it would go on a ballot, just so I put that out there. However, my comment is, like, city staff, you guys have done an amazing job doing everything that we've asked, but you went beyond, right? You put that pause for those other two people because we don't know what's going to go on with this. So you guys are being fiscal responsible even before we can ask you to be. So your forward thinking when it comes to this is appreciated as well.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, are we ready, Mr. Fieser?
So overview of the next steps based on council decisions tonight is what we're coming at. As staff will come through and come back and make changes to the ordinance for review. And from what we've heard tonight is we'll probably start at the $230 cap. And that'll allow council the option to make decisions to what levels to carry that at, is what we've heard tonight. If you think that I'm wrong, certainly do, but I think we have to choose one place to start, right? And that will be our one place to start. We'll continue to work on the 10-year financial plan based on council direction, including the allocation of the $5 million in general fund support. And you should see that through the next budgeting process as we continue to work on this program. We'll prepare the budget amendment for fiscal year 26. And so that's the stuff that we'll do. We do plan on coming back to you. As you review the council agenda tonight, you'll see that there is a pause for the resolution, extension of the pause on the next council agenda. So we're excited to have that and to see what the outcome of these legal ramifications may be. We do understand how difficult of a decision this is for you. And the one thing that I do want to reiterate is that I firmly believe that if we have dedicated staff with the charge, that this community is going to be better served as we move forward. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Fieser. Great. Well, thank you all for your participation. Thank you to the public. We will go on now to City Council updates. Councilor Vigil, are you ready to go?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This time I do not have like that weird pause or whatever happened to me last work session during updates. So Laramie Town Gown met last Tuesday, and it was a really good meeting. We were able to go to Wyotech with an optional tour afterwards. And so it was actually my first time at Wyotech ever. And Wyotech used to be in my backyard, quite literally. And so it was really great to be able to meet staff, a lot of whom I already knew just from other areas. And then I think our Town Gown Association has really been working towards establishing more of an identity. And I think that we're getting there. And I think it's a really exciting time to be part of that group. And so we've been talking about just different options for supporting students, but then also like faculty and staff who are moving to Laramie, and what our housing market kind of looks like, especially our rental market. And so there's some pretty cool ideas out there, and I think we'll be moving forward in some tangible ways. So good stuff. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'll report briefly on the Laramie Youth Council, but because you reported to them, Mayor, I want you to carry most of the report for that. But the Laramie Youth Council did meet this past week and to set some goals, and I'll leave the rest to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Freed, any updates?
Thank you, Mayor. My audio is being somewhat weird, so I'll go fast. I meet with the Ranch Advisory Commission tomorrow, Traffic Safety Commission tomorrow. There will be some Traffic Safety Commission interviews that the mayor and I will be attending in the first couple weeks of December. And the Railroad Depot Board meeting is tomorrow. And right now I'm missing the Park Trees and Rec Board meeting to be here. And that's all my updates.
Thank you. Counselor O'Doherty.
Laramie Advisory Commission on Disability met last Thursday and met their new member and mostly just talked about, about subcommittees for various plans. No, nothing pressing.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Lockhart, you ready?
I am. First of all, I did a Wild Tech tour today with Counselor Newman, City Clerk Nancy, and then also Counselor Bowling was able to participate for part of it, and it's fantastic. I'd love to spend even more time. And their job fair was going on, so we got to see that. So, and all the different companies that were there. I had the shortest planning commission meeting ever on Monday. It was 14 minutes. So in and out. And then after that, we had the comprehensive plan steering committee meeting, which ended up having to be postponed an hour due to no electricity at the MOC because of the fires. And I did want to give a shout out to everybody that helped with that. That was quite the updates from Janine, and then also just everybody that was involved in that. So, but just more ideas. We were able to get the Lincoln Community Center to be able to open up for us. So we had a shortened meeting, but we did have some people here for that. So the consultants, so we wanted to still be able to hold the meeting. So we did that, and I think those are very productive, trying to come up with some plans to help us in the future. And I think that's it. And then I will not be here. I'll be Zoom on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you very much. Counselor Newman.
My update was the WildTech tour. So one other cool thing that the counselors got to do was talk to our industry partners. So the ones that will come in and, give us equipment or software, those kinds of things. And Counselor Bowling had some really good questions for them, some of those guys. So I don't want to steal his thunder. But Counselor Bowling had to leave early, so he's going to get with me next week to see about another date. And when that happens, I will make sure to send it out to you guys. The bad part is the career fair won't be going on, but you'll still be able to. Yeah, there was 104 employers, 300 people traveled to Laramie to recruit students from WyoTech. So pretty cool to see.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I had a Main Street meeting, and the biggest update there is that actually it's kind of a combo. They have helped get businesses on 3rd Street kind of bought on to doing the lighting down 3rd Street. And I think they have pretty much all but one building set out. So the lights are starting to go up. So that should really, and those will be year round, kind of change with different things happening. So that's pretty exciting. They also will have of course, the holiday parade and Shop Small Saturday. And they're also doing a campaign to just shop local, encouraging everyone to shop locally. I think probably the mayor has maybe reached out to some of you about getting a video or a picture taken to share some of your favorite shops. It doesn't have to be downtown shops, it's any shop in town. So that's exciting. And then we had the meeting with President Seidel and Todd at the end of last month. That was, I felt like a good, beneficial conversation. And then a couple of folks joined me on Monday to talk about some of the federal cuts and what that means to our community. So I appreciate all of those who were able to come. If you have questions, I'm happy to share information if you weren't able to come. So.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Let's see. Well, I participated in the interfaith food drive And that was a very heartening experience, and the generosity of our community is amazing. And people just came out with bags of food, and we will be ready to disperse that on the 15th. The Thanksgiving baskets will be dispersed. And Town and Gown, I attended that with Councilor Vigil, and we are narrowing down our work, as she said, to rental awareness, the savvy renter education. That's one group. And the other group is neighborhood relations and looking at the impact of student populations on neighborhoods. So that's moving forward. The Finance Committee met last Tuesday, and we continue to remark to the Finance Committee how descriptive the labeling is becoming. It makes the work of going through a 30-something page monthly expenditure budget much easier and fewer questions, because the descriptions are just so easy to understand. And when we find some that are a little confusing, then we bring that out, and they are gradually working on that so that anyone would be able to come in and be able to read the notation on the budget. I was the guest of the Laramie Youth Council on Wednesday, last Wednesday, and I am very impressed with the students that we have. They are earnest, they care about civic engagement, and I was able to participate in their exercise to explore their goals. And again, we have a youth council that is extremely concerned about youth mental health. And they're concerned about stigma and that as a barrier to treatment. And so we guided them through an exercise to try to, because their vision is this big and their time is limited. So we tried to work with them in pulling in their focus a bit on developing something that they could accomplish. This wasn't a council duty, but I did attend the Touchstone art exhibit out at the territorial prison, and it was extremely well done, and some really beautiful Laramie art, and apparently sales were quite robust. And then the vice mayor and some others did a significant amount of work to put a meeting together of community nonprofits, community leaders. Most of our representatives were there at the meeting to look at the impact that this shutdown of the government and the impact that the loss of SNAP has had to the community. And it was further suggested that we may want to start looking at how we might better prepare in the future our community for events such as this, so that we're possibly able to fundraise, to have a fund where we're not behind the event, but we're prepared and in front of the event. And I'm hoping that we'll continue to work as a group, but we did have Representatives Sherwood, Provenza, Chestick, as well as Senator Rothfuss, all in attendance and taking notes about what to take back to the legislature. And then today I had the pleasure of going to the Peatling and Son Jonathan Railsburg grand opening and got to wield a big hammer and drive a spike. And so that is my updates.
Can I add one more thing, Mayor?
Oh, sorry. And the mayor the vice mayor has one more.
Just two things about the same subject, though. I want to send a special thank you to Nancy, who showed up on Tuesday, and Todd when city offices were closed to open that facility for community members to get together and talk about the issue. So thank you so much for taking that time to be there and to. It was your day off and you showed up, which is like just really special. Thank you. The other one thing that I forgot to mention in the update is now Soup Kitchen and Interfaith are doing pretty well food-wise, but they need volunteers because there's been an influx of food and they need help getting it sorted. And so if you are interested in that, please just meet with them beforehand because they don't like a huge influx of volunteers. They'd like to be able to schedule that out.
Yes, and if you know of people that are looking for volunteer opportunities, if they will contact either Soup Kitchen or Interfaith, they can be put to work, but they do need to go through a little bit of a training, signing some confidentiality stuff and being on their schedule. Yes, Councillor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Just really quick regarding food security, there's a little free pantry on Laramie's west side that just opened up on the north side of the Lincoln Community Center. And so that was all neighborhood kind of organized, and there's a lot of stuff in there right now. And so if you live on the west side and are in need of some groceries, please hit that up. If you know of anyone who needs those resources, let them know. Thanks.
Linda Devine has been posting pictures of that little pantry as it's been growing, and I was very impressed with the number of spices and hot sauces that are in there. So we're getting fancy. All right, councilors, if you can please look at our agenda for next week. And Councillor Newman.
I want to pull 9I from the consent, put on the regular, please.
Okay. Can City Clerk, could we put 9I after 13, make that 14?
Sure.
So that planning is all together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
So 9I. Any other? Do you want to go ahead and voice your question?
Just if we're still on the consent.
Well, now we'll move to, if there's no further question on consent, let's move to regular agenda. Yes, Councillor Newman.
Assistant City Manager, item 15, is there a time on it, or is it something that we have to come up with just so we're prepared?
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councillor Newman, I believe Janine's probably better. I think we planned it to July 1, 2026. Yep, end of fiscal year.
Good question. City Clerk?
Mayor, if I could, we received a request for a proclamation for small, shop small.
Yes.
So if we would like to see if the council would like to add that to this agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I saw a thumbs up everywhere. Okay. And no further suggestions. The mayor and I asked for item 13. It was on the consent agenda, and we asked that that be moved to the regular agenda, not because we had a problem with it, but because we thought it would allow for public update on the advances that are being made with the 4th Street project. All right. With that, this meeting is adjourned.